WNST, Towson. I did the math. I met this guy, I believe it was April, it might have been May of 1992, as Camden Yards opened. He was the closer with the big curveball on our team and the friendly Midwesterner via the South, who now lives in Southern California. I mean, he's been all around the country. He decided to go there. He was our first closer for many people of this generation of Oriole baseball. We welcome the Otter, Gregg Olson, back onto the program. You can follow him on Twitter at Gregg Olson30, as well as I follow him out on Facebook, and he's going to be following the Orioles around here, doing some Oriole baseball in a couple of weeks. Otter, welcome back. Welcome home. I know it's baseball season, which means it's a good time to talk about relief pitching and that sort of thing, right?
Hey, Nestor, how are you?
You are writing the unwritten rules of baseball and trying to write them down. First off, why aren't they written down? And have you ever seen a really good scroll of the unwritten rules of baseball for even guys like me who didn't play the game or around it a little bit to understand?
Actually, I have not. I started this and I got to about day 7 or 8, and I was like, okay, I need one. And went looking on the internet, and somebody had a list, and it was like, they had 25 of them, and it was redundancy through the first 10. You know, don't run when you're ahead, don't run when you're behind, don't steal third when you're ahead. And it's just like, I'm going, you basically said all that. So I haven't found a good one. I'm kind of a couple of guys on Facebook have, followed along and have chimed in. Tim Leary, who pitched with the Yankees and the Dodgers.
I've seen him pop up in there. I mean, I'm just watching it for fun. You're up to 14 now. Dude, you get to 20. You could do a book. I mean, just chapters on what happens when those rules get broken and real life narrative, because I mean the baseball community now sort of sitting out there, old guys like you and me who've been friends, remain friends. You've got friends I didn't have. I have friends you didn't have. I would think there could be one hell of a think tank of storytelling of, remember that time, Otter, you showed up that player on that other team? Remember that time that guy admired the home run he hit off of you? I bet you do. Right?
Well, it's like I said, it's been fun because Doug Flynn chimed in this morning, and this morning's was, don't eat during the game and don't drink alcohol during the game, or before the game for that fact. But he chimed in, and somebody had asked me, because one of my first stories of being in the big leagues was 1988. I got called up, and Terry Kennedy had been in the All-Star game the year before, and he was our catcher, and we're sitting, he had a day off, so he's sitting out in the bullpen, and it's my first day in Yankee Stadium. And I'm just sitting out there just kind of in shock. And he walks out of the bullpen, goes to the center field, goes behind the center field fence to a gate, and comes walking back with a pepperoni pizza. And in the minor leagues, the bullpens are so far removed from kind of anything that guys will have pizza down in the bullpen. And so I really didn't think much about it. So he comes walking out there with a pepperoni pizza. Well, not an hour later, I get called into the game, and Frank Robinson meets me on the mound, and I got, Dave Henderson, Jack Clark, and Dave Winfield, and I'm 21 years old, and I'm full from pizza.
Did you get a little sauce on your lapel or anything like that?
Well, no? I took the ball from him, and I looked down my shirt, going, please don't have any pizza stains.
Well, I mean, was that a bullpen? Was that the last time you ever ate, or did you eat? Right?
That was the last pizza I ever ate during a game.
Pepperoni. Well, I mean, that'll talk back to you, especially up there in the Bronx if you got some good pizza. Lee Smith used to nap, literally go into the locker room and take a nap. I mean, for guys in the bullpen, it was always a different heartbeat for you guys who didn't start, right? I mean, whole different way of viewing the game. You see the game completely removed from your teammates every single night all year long, right?
Well, you heard Lee Smith. He would go, sleep for the first 5 innings. But that was after, he became Lee Smith. He didn't just start doing it. And guys, Elrod Hendricks, who was my bullpen coach, wouldn't let me stay in the clubhouse. So I spent my 6 years in Baltimore, my first 6 years in Baltimore, closing games. And, at some point I was, one of the better guys in the league at doing what I was doing. And every other one of them was coming out in the 7th. And I was the only guy that was out there for all 9. But that was what Elrod told me to do. And that was what I did. So, Lee Smith was Lee Smith, and Dennis Eckersley is legendary for, taking a little, he was too nervous to take a nap. So he would as he told me, would just sit there and chain smoke for about 7 innings.
Well, I mean,
watching the game, being nervous.
It must have been completely different for like Eckersley, who started for a long time and then went to the bullpen, that there's a whole different heartbeat about it. But I would also think from the bullpen perspective, for a young guy like you to be sitting next to Elrod out in center field, even in the first inning, second inning, third inning, that you're learning baseball, that talking baseball at that level when you get there. You got to be a sponge when you're a 21, 22-year-old kid when you come up. In the old days, one of the unwritten rules is the elder statesman would make sure that you were paying attention. Kurt Schilling loves to tell that story about coming out and having Frank Robinson, and he didn't even know who was up because his head wasn't in the game. Because when you're young, you need to have your head in the game.
On that one.
Sure.
Nestor, don't get me started on that story. That still gives me nightmares where he walked by me because I was proverbially, as they say in the bullpen, I was dead that night. Had thrown 3 days in a row or whatever it was. So Schilling went out for the 8th, and I was dead and just kind of sitting there in the bullpen. And he just, as he's literally got 3 feet into the stadium in Toronto, turns around, looks at me, and goes, "How are we pitching this guy?" And I just was like, oh, God.
Oh, God, here we go.
And first pitch, home run, game tied, game over, one way or the other. And it's just like, it didn't go well for Kurt after that when he walked into the clubhouse with a couple of the older guys.
Well, and then he found himself, and, 20 years later, was still pitching in the big leagues. And
he had a great career. I'm just saying he was young and stupid and wasn't paying attention. And, it's the older guys. It's the older guy's job to, be there and help, but we didn't have a lot of older guys when I was down there. When I was, in 89, it was, Brian Holton and Mark Williamson were probably our 2 older guys, and they'd been in the league 2 years. So there wasn't veteran presence down there for me to sit and sponged off of, and Elrod was great, but, he had things to do too. So it wasn't like I was sitting down there sponging. It was a bunch of guys my age, or I'm obviously a little bit older, but with almost the same amount of experience. So they,
But you're talking baseball, though, right? I mean, to some degree, there's real baseball going on and situational stuff that you do learn from being out there, right?
Nestor, you got 162 games, 9 innings. I made a golf course in Camden Yards for sunflower seed flicking.
In the early days. Gregg Olson's here, the Otter, joining us now from Southern California. You can follow him out on Twitter. He's going to be in town doing some Oriole baseball. And, one thing I would just say globally to you, because you and I get together and we try, we talk a little bit. Sometimes it's situationally. Sometimes I ask you about bullpen stuff or call you during the playoffs to talk about it. But, boy, the game has changed so much. I mean, you left the game at the turn of the century, 2000, 2001. I guess we're 17 years out. But the way the game is played, the people who were a part of the game when you were there versus now, how analytics has changed, it's situational, how we line up differently now, the strikeout and the home run have become such a big part of this, and I think bullpens, especially in the postseason, have become such a huge, huge part of baseball and how the strategy changes in October. It really is a different kind of game and how you're trying to go about winning a championship in the modern era, right?
It's very different now, yes. I could start seeing it changing towards the end of the 90s where guys like Roger Clemens and Cal Ripken, the guys that were the ambassadors of the game for so long started to phase out, and maybe their way of playing the right way, we talked about me doing the unwritten rules. Well, I've gotten, kicked by some people going, it's so outdated. That's why there's, this and that. And I'm like, no, I'm not, that's just the way I was taught to play. And I was taught, my dad taught me one way to play, and then I got to the big leagues, and Cal Ripken taught me, this way to play. And they weren't different. It was just, here's the rules. You just don't do this. You don't, if they hit one of our guys, you take care of one of their guys. And so my whole career was, they hit Billy Ripken at second base, then I found a way to get their second baseman. Might not be today, it might be tomorrow. And I was hoping that they would figure out the symmetry. But, it started really getting, I didn't like the game that much when I got out in 2002. I was seeing, the younger guys coming up and they were entitled to be there. Nowadays everybody's got their phones and I touch and whatever else sitting in the clubhouse. I don't think there's a whole lot of communication.
Do you sense any of it that's old school? I mean, do you still see stuff sometimes that feels to you old school in a way? Because, I mean, look, I go to the games and nobody even keeps score, right? I mean, there's no such thing as keeping score anymore. I mean, so much of what it used to be, and when I go now, they're into the shell game and into the ketchup races and the mustard races and the president races. I think to some degree the entertainment thing has overshadowed a lot of the nuts and bolts baseball for a lot of people who watch baseball passively but not really, really hardcore interested in what's going on out there.
Well, yeah, and this business is entertainment. It's about entertaining the fans, and if it's a president's race or a hot dog race, I mean, the Brewers were doing the sausage race in the seventh inning, from the minute I came in the big leagues in '88. So that's been around for decades. I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with the analytics. I have a problem with some of the shifts. Because, if you're going to get angry at somebody bunting, well, you're giving them a hit. They just have to take it. And it gets them out of, usually it's Chris Davis and has enormous power. And it gets him out of his game a little bit to try to bunt and just take a single. And that's the whole point of it. Yeah, you know what? You want a free hit? Here it is. I'm not a big fan of the analytics for the bullpen. You know what? I think it cost the Dodgers the World Series last year, them taking Wood out in the fourth inning because somebody upstairs said that he can't go third time around the order. I'm like, really? He's got a shutout. He's throwing really well. Who cares what the book says? And there was manager Frank Robinson was one of them that threw the book out. He had me intentionally walk Alan Trammell, who's a right-handed hitter, to get to Lou Whitaker, who's a left-handed hitter.
Well, it's almost like going to Vegas and playing blackjack. There's a book, and if you just follow the book, you follow the book, and anybody can sit there and tell you statistically exactly what might be in the hand. And baseball's become that. I mean, all of sports to some degree. Part of this is the arc of the ball and the bat speed and how fast the ball's going out and coming in, and all of that the things that you can literally measure in that way. But how it affects shifts, how it affects bullpens. And the sort of gospel part of it where the manager's not really managing, he's just sort of doing what the book tells him to do. That is very, very foreign to the baseball I grew up with, for sure, right?
Well, that's where, I think you look around the league, and I'm going to say this as politically correctly as I possibly can. I think some teams are hiring managers that they can control with, that will stay inside their book. And if they think you won't stay inside their book, they will not hire you.
Well, we saw, three very capable managers last year winning divisions: New York, Boston, Washington, all thrown out. Dusty. We'll see what happens with Buck at the end of this year. But the era of, Earl Weaver and note cards, that's like gone. That'll never come back again, right?
Well, that's, Girardi gone, Dusty gone. I think Dusty probably just sat there and looked at the things, and I wonder about Socha out here in Southern California. That, okay, thanks for the notes, and goes down and plays his game. But
they used to be suggestions, and right now they're not suggestions anymore; they're mandates. Right?
I think it's mandated. We'll hire you, but here's the way you're going to play. And so I just think they're hamstrung. And like I said, I don't know. I don't really dig it. I think they're looking at ways to speed up the game. Well, how about you throw out all those analytics and let the bullpen guys come in when the righty's facing the righty and the lefty's facing the lefty, or Andrew Miller's the best middle guy in the game and he's going to do his 2 innings, doesn't matter who's coming up. And we got what we got, and let's dance, Now it's righty, lefty, this guy. And you want to know where the time goes. Man, you watch 12 bullpen changes. Good night.
Yeah, 4-hour baseball games. We have plenty of that going on. Gregg Olson is our guest. He is Gregg Olson 30, the famous otter from my youth, and, of course, the beginning of Camden Yards. Now doing it out on the internet. He's going to be in town in a couple of weeks doing some Orioles games on the radio as well. All of our WNST programming brought to you by our friends at Howard Bank, a relentless commitment to being the best at everything they do. Branches throughout Baltimore and Maryland. The unique, hands-on approach to banking. Also, Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast. the tasty coffee, the best fried chicken in the land. And, of course, make sure you're using that Royal Farms app when you're gassing up. You'll get some free chicken and Western fries as well. The Maryland Jockey Club sponsoring us now, getting ready for Preakness, getting ready for the Derby. I'm taking my wife to Derby Day at Laurel. Of course, the Tessio running this week as well down at Laurel, and we move to Pimlico next month. Black-Eyed Susan, the Pink Festival on the 18th, and the Preakness on the 19th, and the Laurel entries in our morning newspaper each and every morning, powered up by Planet Fitness as well as out on the front of WNST.net. Gregg Olson is our guest. He has been writing the unwritten rules of baseball out on Facebook. We're up to 14 entries. You can go check that out as well. And for you coming in with the Orioles here, by the time you get here, and I know you're 2 weeks out on this, and a bunch of the alums are doing some games, and I think it's great that any of you come back and participate with stuff that's going on here. But Ken Rosenthal reported earlier this week that there's upheaval. Look, I've been here 25 years, Otter. I don't know the current players because they took my press pass away 12 years ago because they didn't like me asking questions. So, they don't like – Angelos hasn't had a press conference since you left the organization. And, there's not a lot of information. And, Brady's sort of running the place but sort of not running the place. Buck and Dan are in their last year. Adam Jones is in his last year, as is Britton, as is Brock, as is Machado. Obviously Buck and Dan not really communicating all that well. You might find one hell of a mess when you get here, and I'll tell you this, Bundy is special, Machado is special, but the rest of it right now is so much a box of chocolates, including Cobb, who they may have rushed out onto the mound. He just did not look ready to give you 90 big league pitches, on a 40-degree day at Fenway Park over the weekend, Otter.
Well, you know what? Sometimes, you don't know all the background, and if people are protecting people, like I'd protect Cobb. I would, if he wasn't ready to go 90 pitches, then it'd be my mistake for putting him out there for that many. I thought he was throwing well, or he was doing all right, or our bullpen was in a shambles from, you try to protect him and maybe give that information out at somebody else's expense, preferably, whoever's fault it was, but you don't know. Maybe he was ready and he just, crappy weather, had a bad game. So until he comes out or somebody comes out and says this is the reason, you don't know. There was a lot of nights that, it was all my fault. When I was out there on the mound, it was nobody else's fault. It was all mine. And, even
though the manager got blamed for putting you in, right? Like literally, one way or another.
Well, no, not normally they didn't get blamed for putting me in, but there was nights where it's just a bad night, and we're still early, let's call it middle April. We got plenty of time, and Cobb's got a track record, and you just assume that he's going to get back on track, and one bad night's not going to not be the end all.
Yeah, well, we're in a different day and age now where they're trying to sell tickets, they're trying to get kids out. John Angelos is now kind of sort of running the place. They haven't really said that. They don't really say much, but kids are coming free. They're letting kids into the ballpark for free, and people have not taken advantage of that yet, and I don't know whether winning would necessarily be a part of why you'd bring your kid to the game or not, but the winning part of this has proven to be very difficult early in the year. Don't have a leadoff hitter, don't really have a dynamic lineup at all. Defense is a little bit more backwards than it was. Still remains to be seen whether Machado playing out of position, and now Beckham again playing out of position, but the one thing we've seen, and I know you went through this with your arm and being ready to pitch every night, was Dylan Bundy is as advertised as he was before he was injured. He really looks like a kid you're going to give him the ball every fifth night, and he's going to get you 6th, 7th, 8th inning and look like a real ace out there so far.
Yeah, I know. I got to see him in spring training a couple of years ago, and his stuff is electric. And there's not that many people like that. So, yeah, he's, it's still going to be a little bit of a learning process and for him, but, if he can go out and just start understanding what he is and what he can do, and then, stay within that framework, he's going to be very successful. His stuff is electric.
Well, there's no doubt about that. But you always wonder if it's going to come back after surgery, right? And if or when, right?
Well, that is the one good thing about today's game is that if, you have a surgery now, you're pretty likely of coming back pretty close to what you were, if not equal. Man, that was the issue for me when I blew my elbow out. It was, 50-50 if I would ever throw a baseball again, let alone pitch at the big league level after a Tommy John surgery. So I didn't have it. And nowadays these guys come back and coming back faster than ever, better than ever. So I really, it's hard for me to look at somebody that had surgery and expect less. That sounds wrong, but
well, yeah. I mean, everybody has to make that decision, though, right? In the modern era, there is no decision. You do it, and you keep the faith, right? Like it's kind of like getting, LASIK surgery. You go under, you shut your eyes, you open, and you feel like it's going to work most of the time in the modern era.
Well, yeah, LASIK's probably not a great example, but these guys coming back from Tommy John surgery and shoulder surgeries, they've gotten this down so well that I don't really expect much of a letdown,
I just mean with a leap of faith. You take the leap of faith that it's going to be okay, that it's not going to be the end for you.
Well, I mean, yeah, nowadays I think you can. I've been asked that quite a bit. Would I have had the Tommy John surgery if it was now? Absolutely.
Right.
There wouldn't have been a thought about it because, I was going into uncharted territory by not doing it. And, you just don't know. And nowadays, I think you got a pretty good idea that you're going to come back and have a pretty good chance, if you put the effort into rehab and get everything back to where it was, then everything should be back.
He is Gregg Olson. He is Gregg Olson 30 out on Twitter. And, of course, the famous Otter from our bullpen days back at the beginning of Camden Yards in the late 80s and Why Not and Johnny Oates and Cal Ripken and 2131 and all those great memories joining us now. All of it brought to you by our friends at Cole Roofing. We all felt that March wind blowing in last month. Don't let it goof on your roof. You got a commercial space or a corporate roof space. Let our friend Bill Cole and his company take good care of you. Also by Pizza John's. I'm wearing my Pizza John's lid. I was over there on Saturday getting a delicious pepperoni pizza, but I didn't have to come in and do any closing the way Gregg Olson did back in the 1980s. Last thing for you, man. You watch baseball now. You're out in Southern California. This L.A. baseball war that's going on now where, the Dodgers have become the Dodgers again, and obviously the Angels going all in on this kid that's been a sensation. You're out there. The Fernando Mania thing, I know you remember that. You and I are the same age as kids, and you were around when, I guess Ichiro came over, or when certainly Hideo Nomo starting the All-Star game back during your era of baseball. But this kid's got a whole different thing going on, dude. You were a decent two-way player, right? You swung the bat when you played ball. Everybody played. They pitched and played shortstop, or they hit 429 in their pony league team. I mean, that was pretty typical for guys of our age. But never thinking you were ever going to do both in the big leagues. You took an angle, and that's the direction you went in, and you pitched, right?
Well, yeah, I went to college as a first baseman pitcher, and just saw the amount of work and the hours and everything else that I was going to spend, and then throw in classes and just thought the hitting had way too much work to fix, so took the easy route and went pitching. But no, I just look at what he's doing right now, and haven't seen him pitch yet, but have heard the scouting reports, and it sounds like his stuff is pretty special. Hitting wise, I generally try to give somebody about a month and a half, 2 months, and then start watching. If they're able to figure out what the league's doing to them when the adjustment comes, and the adjustment doesn't work, or they readjust to it and they're still able to maintain what they're doing, then they got a good chance at having a great career at it. But until probably June, I'll keep an eye on, but not really. But it's kind of funny out here with the Angels Dodgers, because it's just like Jets Giants. You like one, you don't like the other. And it seems like, Southern California's got the Angels, and, how can you really care about the Angels? But you either like one or you like the other, and you grew up watching one and you don't like the other. It's no different than Auburn, Alabama, USC, UCLA, all the good rivalries.
Well, but the other part of the Angels have always had the star power, right? Like, whether it's Trout and before that Pujols, and they were Hamilton, they were always trying to chase that the attraction, Disney World, right? Like, this is a reason to come down to Anaheim and go to a baseball game and sit in traffic to do it. Socha's had a hell of a thing there for 2 decades now, right? So, that's carried on. But any guy that through the first 2 weeks in the big leagues can pitch 13 innings to a 2.08 ERA and take 30 at-bats in the big league and be batting .370, that's just, and 3 home runs. I mean, even just do that for 2 weeks, to me, you're a legend, right? I mean, he might hit 241 the rest of the way, and he might be a 4.5 ERA pitcher by the time it's all over with, which isn't bad. And I think that's the weird part, that, if Otter, if you would have been a 241 hitter and would have been able to go out and run around in the outfield, let's say an Orsilac kind of, baseball player as an outfielder, but and a good reliever, and you can hang around and make be a Mark Williamson, a really good reliever for a period of time, that would have been unheard of in your era. Just be able to be a 240 hitter and a 4 ERA pitcher. We're expecting this guy to be Cy Young and Mickey Mantle, right? Like, at the same time. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, you know what? He had the luxury enough of, trying it in Japan, which I'm not saying is a bad league, but it's not the major league. So he was able to do it. And so you'll see guys that, might have the abilities in college and then get to the minor leagues, and one of them just doesn't work. And so they usually run themselves out, after college. They get to the minor leagues, and then they're done doing one of them. And he had the luxury of going over there and doing it at the highest level in Japan, and kind of getting an idea how it works and what he needs to do. And I don't see that happening here in the United States. I don't see somebody running all the way through college and getting to the minor leagues and doing both.
No one would let them, right? Like, literally, this kid may change that, right? Yeah.
They usually cut them off at the legs at some point in the minor leagues, where somebody will go, you know what, you needed to focus on pitching, and there will be some organization. And, I mean, I think of Tim Hudson at Auburn was the Golden Spikes with, had 17 wins and hit 4-something. And he gets to the big league, and he's a great hitting pitcher. But he was, somebody cut him off when he got into the minor leagues.
Well, he probably could have taken the bat every third day, right, when he wasn't pitching. And he would have been a 250, 260 hitter in the big leagues, right?
Yeah, and then you look at Rick Ankiel.
Oh, sure.
I mean, there are people that have done it. It's just most organizations want you to focus on what they think you're best at and kind of cut off the other part and don't give it much of a chance.
Hudson hit 263, by the way, in 76 at-bats in 207. He hit 263. So only 160 hitter for his lifetime, 17 years. But, obviously at the end, you're not even focusing on it, right? Like, at the end, you're not trying to become a better hitter necessarily when you're 30 years old and you're in the big leagues and making $20 million a year, right? It's just, give me the ball every fifth day. I got a job.
Right? You're putting your swings in because it's going to help, but you're not a major league hitter where you're putting in 300 swings a day, So,
like this kid's going to have to do in order to hit 260 in the big leagues, right?
Yeah, it'd be kind of entertaining to have somebody follow him around for a couple weeks and just watch his routines and see what he's doing.
Half of Japan's trying to do that right now, apparently. They're writing stories about the guys writing stories. Dave Sheinin wrote a story about the guys writing the stories. It's crazy, and I know baseball mania has kind of taken over where you are out in Southern California. Gregg Olson is here. He's Gregg Olson 30 out on Twitter. He'll be calling some Orioles baseball games. He's been my friend for going on 3 decades now, and I do appreciate the friendship, Otter, and I do get a kick out of your Facebook page and your unwritten rules. So keep them going. When we get up to 20, you and I are going to go find a publisher for this, okay? And some stories.
You got it. I got to find some help.
Hey, we'll see you in Baltimore soon, man. Come get some crab cakes, pal.
All right, Nestor.
You got it. Gregg Olson, the Otter, joining us here. He is Gregg, 2 G's, Olson 30, out on Twitter, and follow his baseball wisdom. Always one of the great guys and one of the fun guys to talk baseball with. Appreciate his time, as always. Everything here brought to you by our friends at the Modell Lyric. Britt Floyd will be performing the music of Pink Floyd. I did a little interview with Damian Darlington, who's the band leader, doing the part of all the Gilmore stuff in Pink Floyd. The night of the NFL draft, if you're on our text service, you'll get that first. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And you can sit at the Modell Lyric and watch Britt Floyd do the music of Pink Floyd while the draft is going on, and not miss anything at all. You can go on May 3rd and see Jackson Brown like my wife and I are going to do For sure. Dr. My Eyes, indeed. Kansas, Steely Dan, lots of acts, lots of, different types of entertainment, family entertainment like the Wildcrats coming to the Modell Lyric. They are our partner. We're going to be bragging about all things Modell Lyric all year long. Brigade action continues. They won their first game last week against the Washington Valor. They host the Albany Empire on the 28th next Saturday. All the information up at BaltimoreBrigade.com as well as at Monumental Sports. When you can download the app, you can watch the games. We're going to be having some guests on, some players on as well. The Brigade loaded up this year in the Arena Football League with 4 teams in the league. A brand of indoor football. We'll be talking more with them as a sponsor as well. Last but never least, I mentioned crab cakes. Crab cakes and pizza. That's what they do up at Box Hill Pizzeria. The best crab cakes in Harford County can now be shipped anywhere. Go to boxhillpizzeria.com to ship them and surprise someone you like from out of town with delicious crab cakes. And they are remodeling everything inside Box Hill. It's been the same for a long time, other than the Coca-Cola machine up there. But they are expanding the dining room out onto the porchway there. You're going to see it. I've seen the plans. It looks beautiful. Box Hill Pizzeria, improving for you up in Abingdon, but they can't improve those crab cakes. So, or the Hitos for that matter, or the stuffed shrimp for that matter, or the dressing, which I love so much, and I've been having on fresh salads here the last couple weeks. BoxHillPizzeria.com. It's more like a crab cakeria. The BuyAToyota.com audio vault is there 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. I am Nestor. I'm easy to find. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook, as well as our YouTube, WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.